Welcome to our discussion of Meditation 5, concerning the essence of material things and again concerning God, that He exists. There are three key elements in Meditation 5. First, the distinction between fabricated and innate ideas. Second, there's yet another proof for the existence of God, which we're going to skip. And third, overcoming the origins of my mind argument from first meditation that gave rise to the doubts about mathematics, so that the thinker can recover mathematical knowledge. So we're going to focus just on the first and the third of these points and not worry about the so-called ontological argument for the existence of God. So what is the difference between fabricated and innate ideas according to Descartes? Well, for Descartes, both ideas seem to come from within me. That is to say, they are somehow just in my mind, and they don't seem to have as their source something that is external to my mind. However, innate ideas are really different because they have what Descartes calls a determinate nature, essence, or form, which is unchangeable and eternal. Descartes uses the example of a triangle, and he points out that what seems quite unique about the very concept of a triangle is that it already contains within it certain attributes or properties. For example, the property that its interior angles add up to 180 degrees. That property is not something that I put into the triangle with my imagination. It's not a property that any human being put into the triangle. It is just a property that the very concept of a triangle has in and of itself. And as Descartes says, it won't do to try to refute this by simply telling me that I have an idea of a triangle from having seen triangles, because there are lots of other ideas that seem to have these determinate natures or essences or forms that are unchangeable and eternal, where you cannot really argue that I put those ideas or forms or essences into the idea. So for example, one can prove certain features about a geometrical figure with a million sides. For instance, one can prove what its interior angles must add to. And surely no one could really argue that that's something that we put into the very idea of a million-sided figure. So there are certain ideas that seem to have a kind of life of their own, and it is these ideas that Descartes calls innate ideas. Descartes' innate ideas, then, are very similar to Plato's forms. They are eternal, they are immutable, unchangeable, they are abstract concepts, if you want to think of it that way, and they are there for our discovery. They're there for us to discover and explore and learn what kinds of properties they have. Finally, in third meditation, toward the end of third meditation, Descartes also points out that the difference between fabricated ideas and innate ideas is that when it comes to innate ideas, I can't really add or take away any attributes or properties of the idea, whereas I can with imagined or fabricated ideas. If I ask you to fabricate an idea of a dragon, you can put whatever attributes you want into that dragon or then take them away. But you can't really do that with a triangle. The triangle, because of the very nature of the concept, has certain attributes in and of itself. Now, as Descartes argued in the end of third meditation, the idea of God is innate. So let's skip the proof for the existence of God in fifth meditation and then go right to this passage toward the very end, in the last couple of pages, where Descartes implicitly argues that he no longer has any reason to doubt mathematics. The argument's a bit subtle, and a lot of stuff is in between the lines, but I'll just point out some of the key moves in the argument. First, let's recall the origins argument, or the origins of my mind argument. That's the argument from first meditation, where the thinker says, if God exists, then I have reason to doubt mathematical knowledge. If God doesn't exist, then I have reason to doubt mathematical knowledge, so therefore, I have reason to doubt mathematical knowledge. We agreed earlier that what Descartes needs to do is show that the first premise of that argument is false. He wants to show that it's false that if God exists, I have reason to doubt mathematical knowledge. And we've talked about how what this really means is that he has to show that it's true that God exists and God is the creator of my mind, but false that I have reason to doubt mathematical knowledge. So let's ask, what does the thinker know at this stage? So we're now toward the end of fifth meditation. And what are the things that we can say the thinker knows? Well, of course, we know the thinker knows I am, I exist is true every time I think of it or conceive it in my mind. But relevant to this discussion, the thinker knows that God exists. He also knows from fourth meditation that God gave me an intellect that tends toward the truth. And God is not the source of my errors. And this is important that the thinker is able to convince himself of this in fourth meditation. It's really me who is the source of my errors. And that discovery in meditation 4 also allowed the thinker to determine how to avoid making mistakes in the first place. So the thinker also knows that I never make a mistake when I believe something I perceive clearly and distinctly. All right, so now the thinker says this. The basic, elementary mathematical truths I perceive very, very clearly. So for example, the Euclidean axiom that given any 2 points, there exists exactly one line that has them as endpoints is something that I perceive very, very clearly. That by itself wouldn't give us very much mathematical knowledge because we could only ever know the truths that are self-evidently true. So to gain more mathematical knowledge, what I need to do is to be able to think about and reflect on how mathematical proofs work. And in mathematical proof, what can happen is that I perceive each step in the mathematical proof very clearly. And indeed, as I go through that proof, if I make sure that I do not accept something unless I perceive it very clearly and distinctly, then it looks like I am avoiding error and arriving at true conclusions by starting from true premises. But there's a small glitch in all of this that has to do with memory. Sometimes, because of the nature of my mind, I might forget a mathematical proof. Because you see, according to Descartes, I can't focus my mind on a mathematical proof all the time. I mean, eventually I have to do other things anyway. And some mathematical proofs are so long that I couldn't take in the whole proof in one full thought anyhow. So the question that arises is, well, once I've forgotten the proof, if all I remember is that I did the proof, and I remember that I followed the steps, and that when I did the steps, I remember having perceived them clearly and distinctly, even though I don't remember the steps themselves. Now what should I believe about the conclusion? Well, says Descartes, now that I know that God exists, I can find no reason to doubt a mathematical statement, even if I do not recall its proof. And that's because I know, first, that God exists, second, that God created my mind, third, that my mind or my intellect always tends toward truth, fourth, that I am the source of error, and fifth, that I can avoid error by making sure that I accept as true all and only the things that I perceive clearly and distinctly. So, since God is not a deceiver, I can find no reason at all for doubting the things that I prove in mathematics. You see, I couldn't say that back in first meditation because I did not know the nature of God and I did not know the source of my mistakes.